it has finally come for me to assemble this table. At this point, I just need to build the lower portion that's going to tie all the legs together. And then once that's done, then the top just bolts on. Unfortunately, as far as complications go, I probably had the most at this point. Everything I did leading up to this was just minor things here and there that I was able to overcome fairly easily. The build of the bottom, I think, went fairly well. The legs are attached with a mortise and tenon, and then the framework that ties them all together, I did a through mortise and tenon wedged. And this right here, what you're seeing right now, is about where things started going wrong. For whatever reason, every single time, I always cut my tenons first. I don't know why. Maybe it's fine. I don't know. But my understanding of it is that the tenon is cut second and the mortise is cut first. And I didn't think about that until after I had already started cutting them. So it was just a matter of playing catch up. And when I did the through mortise and tenons for the framework, I did the exact same thing again. So that's why I say I don't know why. I just keep doing it no matter what. It's like a requirement. So the legs, I think they still came out okay. I just cut the mortise slightly smaller than the tenon, and it worked out. They're fairly even. The biggest mistake I think I made was one of them. Well, they were all slightly long, and when I went back to fix something, I shortened one of the tenons, and then I accidentally shortened that same tenon a second time. So that tenon ended up being still long enough, but a lot shorter than it needed to be. So at this point, I'm just smoothing it out. I never bothered planing the sides, only the face when I had it in the taper jig you saw in the last video. So I was smoothing out the ripples caused by the electric planer, making it a lot easier for me to measure and mark and do all the finish work on the making the tenons on everything. But like I said, this part fairly uneventful. I hollowed out the majority of it using a Forstner bit on the drill press, and then it's a whole lot of carving. A lot of this I did cut out because you don't need to see me cut every single mortise over and over. It just gets monotonous, and it's the exact same procedure every time. One last one mistake I did have is, actually no, I had two of them. So the mortise being so close to the top there, and the top being end grain, one of the tenons, slightly taller than the mortise, caused the end grain to pop out, basically crack away. I didn't lose it completely. I was able to glue it back in place with some CA glue and save it, and it might actually be the one I'm working on right now. And it's really not that big of a deal. In the finished product, you don't see it. Another issue I had was, at some point putting this together, the legs split down the length of the grain, all the way through, all three layers. It didn't break completely apart, but it's a significant crack, and in the finished product, you can actually still see it. So it's a little bit disappointing. Moved on to the framework now. Like I said, through mortise and tenon, and then I did Paduke wedges inside. Going through the side, I probably could have just left them flush, but my mortises and tenons are not that great. Even with the wedge, there's still a little bit of gaps in there. And I had a couple issues with this, namely keeping everything like on the same plane. I don't know if coplanar is the word you would use for this situation or not, but I tried to make sure that I use the same reference point for all of them, so that when they were installed, one whole side would be flush through every piece, and it didn't work out that way. And towards the end, it should still be in the video, before the glue setup, and I started clamping everything. I tried using a mallet to tap everything into the side that I wanted it to be referenced onto, and one of the pieces actually just completely broke. At that point, I was able to put glue in the cracks, clamp it, and let it go, and the piece, it came out in one piece, and it's fine, it's usable, but it's definitely there's definitely a crack there, and brute force was not the answer. Facebook channel, Facebook page, I mean, you can see a video, just a close-up of me using that paring chisel there. People always doubt whether the Work Sharp 3000 can make your stuff sharp enough, and I argue that it does. That chisel is not to be confused with the method scary sharp for sharpening your tools, but it's literally scary how sharp that chisel gets. Definitely my best so far. It's a Samson I picked up at a yard sale or a flea market for a couple dollars, and it's a really good investment. So it's a whole lot of pairing, and I'm gonna stop talking for a second and enjoy the music. So a lot of small stuff that I make is with scrap wood left over from other projects. The wedges, that strip of Paduke right there is left over from the head and footboard that I rebuilt on my bed earlier this summer. I cut grooves in the tenons for the wedges to go into, and now I'm using my disc sander that I made on my lathe to make the wedges a little bit better, a little bit more uniform and even. Side note, I just finished the video on this disc sander. It's amazing. If you got a lathe, I definitely recommend, unless you already have a 12-inch disc sander, then you don't need to. But if you don't have a disc sander, but you do have a lathe, I highly suggest you make one for your lathe. I've used that thing on every project since I've made it, to include the legs on this table. In the last video, when I made the legs, I did a 5-degree angle on both ends of them, the top and the bottom, which created one issue, but I didn't discover that until later on. So my original intent was to shoot end grain with a hand plane and just figure out some sort of wedge to make it 5 degrees. I didn't do that. I realized that I could use that disc sander, just put a fence on there, and that way I could do everything perfect and easy. And it did, and then I was able to go back and just trim it up real quick, make sure they're all the exact same length. The problem I realized later on was because since the legs were tapered, the 5 degrees that I put on both ends wasn't true. It was 5 degrees off of the tapered angle, so it was actually like 10 degrees. So one side was 5 degrees, the other side was 10 degrees, so the feet didn't match up. I had to go back to the disc sander later and just trim those up, and now they're all fine, and then I was able to chamfer them with the block plane, and it's easy to go. So just something I realized later on. It was an easy fix, but just not something I thought of at the time. Getting ready for the assembly, I sanded as much as I could ahead of time because it's a lot easier. And this is where some more of the malfunctions. Also, my technique for cutting the mortise and tenons on the router, I should have either taped it up or used a marking gauge, because it did cause some tear out. So that's something to not do in the future. So this is the next day. Framework's all glued up. I've worked through the cracking issues I caused. I caused it. And now it's just a matter of getting the legs glued up and square and parallel with each other and all that. So it was a little bit more challenging because the mortise tenons were a little bit loose, so it wasn't a snug fit. If they'd have been perfect the first time around, everything would have just locked on. There would have been nothing left to do. I took it inside, let it dry for several hours with many bar clamps on there, and now I am attaching the top. I'm using a technique, it's called buttons. Basically, it's like a small L-shaped piece of wood that I also shaped on that disc sander because I use it for everything now. Measuring it up, making sure everything's equal, drilling some pilot holes, and I drilled the buttons in, and it was about 24 hours, maybe more, before I realized that I ended up attaching the top upside down. So what you see being drilled and screwed in place is the top, and the bottom is what is on the bottom on the table. It just bugs me because I know the difference. They're ultimately equal size. You really can't tell the difference, and you wouldn't know otherwise unless I told you. So essentially the end of the build after this was just applying the lacquer, and then you'll see some of the pictures of the finished product. I'm pleased with it. A lot of mistakes were made along the way, but you know, unless you're digging through it, you can't see them. I definitely like it. I finally have a place to set my whiskey after almost a year, and it's already been put to use, and it's fulfilling its role as a place to put my whiskey and remote control next to the couch, so I don't have to keep reaching for it. So thanks for watching. I don't know if you could learn anything from the video the way I presented it, but if you got any questions, or if I know a lot of people have been have complimented the choice of woods or just the style of laminating the alternating woods throughout the legs and stuff like that. So if you get an idea from that and you decide to build your own, please let me know. Post pictures, go to the Facebook page or something, and let me see what you got. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. And thank you. Good luck with woodworking.